I think. So they broke off for another call. They actually had to break off. They were here a little bit earlier in the pursuit. They broke off for another call. And so at this point, LA County Sheriff's Office has, at this point, and we know that this could be tentative, but they have temporarily called off the pursuit at this point.
I wonder if he has a bottle of some sort in his lap. It could be a bottle of wine or,
I see something there.
Coca-Cola or something like that.
It looks like wine bottle. You're right, David.
And I wonder if this is a mental health issue right now. The person's hanging out in a cemetery with a bottle of alcohol, stolen vehicle. He's not driving erratically. I wonder if they're thinking they need to back off of him intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like there has been a deputy involved in an altercation nearby, and they basically called off the pursuit, sent every available unit in that direction. I don't have details on where that other call is taking place, but their attention has completely been diverted to a nearby deputy-involved altercation. So that stands to reason, and in the meantime, we are going to continue to follow this because who knows what danger he may be posing, especially if he's under the influence behind the wheel here. Now, again, can't stress enough, traffic is pretty light here. He has attempted to go through at least one red light. You saw a black and white go the other way here, but he's now northbound on Sunset Avenue, coming up on Temple Avenue, and coming to a stop almost in the middle of the street there. It looks like he's slowing down with traffic there, but some peculiar driving. Again, throughout this entire ordeal, he's been driving relatively slow and semi-safe until they lit him up, and that's when he went around the spike strips and has attempted to run a couple of lights. So we'll see what he does here, but certainly peculiar circumstances, and you're so right, David, it could very well turn out to be just a distraught person behind the wheel, if nothing else. But with that bottle on his lap there, and I couldn't make out, I don't know if you were, whether that was a bottle of wine or maybe a 2-liter bottle of Coke. I just couldn't tell.
To me, it looked like a bottle of wine. If I had to guess between the two, it certainly looked like a bottle of wine to me. But now I'm curious, and I'm sure our desk is looking into what the other call is for them to pull off of a full-blown pursuit and move everybody to another event. We'll try, for our viewers out there, we'll try to get to the bottom of that as well, in case that there's something else going on involving a sheriff's deputy, for them to pull manpower off of this and move it over to that. So we'll keep you posted on that. In the meantime, we're going to continue to watch this pursuit.
We are. Here's what we know. It started a little bit before the 5 o'clock hour. It started in or near the Rose Hill Cemetery. And now, here's a new development. We're seeing a unit back on this pursuit. So we are now seeing a sheriff's deputy back in pursuit of this reported to be a stolen Hyundai crossover SUV with one male driver on board. It's unclear if there are passengers perhaps in the back seat. We couldn't see anyone in the front seat as a passenger, but it's back on now, Chris.
Yeah, I think that's the same deputy that was coming in the opposite direction, made a U-turn, is now following that suspect. We'll try and push in on the primary unit one more time and see if he actually has his lights and sirens on and is continuing the pursuit. Looks like he's fallen back a little bit. It might be still a following. He may wait till he gets additional backup before he lights him up one more time and they attempt to continue this pursuit, if that's what this driver decides to do. In the meantime, there were a number of deputies, again, that broke off the pursuit, went down to Pico Rivera. There was a deputy involved in a fight. The suspect has now been taken into custody down there, right on the border with Downey is where that was taking place. Now this suspect, who is running from the police, is now pulling into a parking lot. Looks like a strip mall here in West Covina. Looks like he's cutting through this parking lot. He's going to come out on Francisquito Avenue, and I have a feeling he probably is very well aware of that LA County Sheriff's deputy that was behind him just a minute ago. You saw he was keeping his distance, maybe a football field behind the stolen SUV, but it looks like he decided to cut through the shopping center and maybe trying to lose that SUV, that Sheriff's deputy SUV. So we'll see what they decide to do here. I would imagine they're just going to wait for some more backup to make their way back into this area before they light them up. That would be what would be typical in this situation, would be for them to wait for additional backup, but you never know.
Right. At least he's not being completely erratic on his behavior. Granted, he is running red lights like we see here, pushing out into these intersections and squeezing his way in.
California, David, now pushing. Now he's basically cut off some of that traffic. He was in the turn lane, cutting back over into the main lanes of Francisquito, and it sounds like LA County Sheriff helicopter has now rejoined this following. So those units are now making their way back into position. We're now just on the edge of West Covina at Francisquito and Hacienda Boulevard, and there are units now making their way over here to assist that SUV, and now the sheriff's helicopter overhead. You just saw him fly through the frame there near the bottom of the screen. He is now orbiting this stolen SUV, so a very slow speed following here as this situation continues. I would imagine any minute now we will see them light him up one more time once they have enough units in position here. You notice he's actually rolled up his driver's side window. That was rolled down just a minute ago. So he's rolled up his window. Now he's got his signal on. He's in the left turn lane, technically. It's he could go straight, or it's also a left turn lane. He may be signaling. Yeah, it looks like he has to make a left or a right here. He's at Hacienda Boulevard, indicating he's going to make a left turn on Hacienda Boulevard. And once again, we are in La Puente here, back in the area where we started.
Okay, and we can see a deputy following, but at least a full block or more behind the vehicle that is wanted, the driver wanted for perhaps stealing this car, and we don't know what else. But we did see a close-up view with this individual, 99% chance it was a wine bottle, wouldn't you say, David? I mean, that was a wine bottle.
It looked like a wine bottle to me.
And, in his lap.
In his lap. It could have been open. Yeah, and I find it interesting that he was at a cemetery as well. And we often see people make gestures with alcohol at a cemetery, and maybe that's what he was doing, or maybe he's just drinking it. We just don't know. But clearly he was concerned when he saw the sheriff's deputy actually spot him, and then he took off. So it looks like they're really moving now.
Oh, wow, really picking up speed now. Look at this, Chris.
Yeah, picking up speed here, and it sounds like West Covina may actually pick up the pursuit here. So the LA County Sheriff's helicopter is now back in position, communicating with West Covina Police Department, who appears to be the agency that's decided to pick this pursuit up. And it does look like I think his sirens are on. You saw he's trying to make his way through traffic here. Where's the SUV, Rob? Is he up ahead a little bit?
I feel like he went by it.
Okay, there he is. Okay.
Is that it?
No.
That's
There he is, right there.
Okay.
Right there. He made a left off of Glendora. Hacienda Boulevard turned into Glendora. Made a right turn off of Glendora, now on Merced Avenue with an LA County, actually a West Covina. Check that, West Covina Police behind him. And you saw this is one of three that I've now counted in the last 30 seconds. 3 West Covina police officers now trying to weave their way through traffic, catch up with this primary unit, and try and get this guy off the road. Again, can't stress enough, still doing pretty slow speeds here through this area of West Covina, but they're going to definitely be a little bit more aggressive than LA County, and they will definitely keep up with him no matter what.
It'll be interesting to see if they try to. I mean, I haven't seen any repeats for him when it comes to the streets that he goes down. So, but with his speed, it's out of the question they do a pit maneuver. That they could potentially put themselves in a position of that. And if he starts to be repetitive, then they have the option of a spike strip.
Yeah, you're right, David. I mean, this type of driving, especially considering how light traffic is, really perfect conditions. Once they see a good opportunity, really ideal conditions for a pit maneuver. So you have to imagine that that's under consideration at this point. We've already seen LA County Sheriff attempt a spike strip with this suspect. So I count now 2 West Covina police officers behind him. There may be a third not too far back. And we're on Merced Avenue coming up on Neff Avenue. Clearly a very residential street, but still wide enough that they could safely do a pit maneuver, especially considering how light traffic is here.
Do they have a law enforcement helicopter over this now, Chris? Because my understanding is that they can't really do a pit unless they have the air support, right? Because they need eyes above looking out for what's ahead so they can, right?
That's right. L.A. County, and here comes the attempt here. You see that officer straddling those double yellow lines. L.A. County Sheriff helicopter is right overhead, orbiting this pursuit and communicating with West Covina police. So this is a mutual aid situation with the LA County Sheriff helicopter communicating with West Covina, and West Covina clearly now showing signs of a possible preparation for a pit maneuver here in the next couple of minutes if they see the right opportunity. But just judging from the driving of that Unit 14 that you see there near the bottom of your screen, the way he was kind of straddling those double yellow lines, trying to get a better glimpse inside the vehicle for sure. There you see the helicopter near the top of the screen, just flew through the shot there. But once they feel comfortable, I would imagine, this is a guess on my part, a little bit of speculation, but an educated guess, that they are probably thinking about a pit maneuver here in the next, in the not too distant future here.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and he is not moving very fast at all. Plus, it's a wide open street, at least as of now, which are ideal conditions to do a pit maneuver. But right now, they are simply staying behind him as they reach this intersection. There goes the sheriff's helicopter. There's a good shot of it, so we do know that's clear evidence that they are overhead. He took that turn pretty quietly, pretty mellow, and then go ahead.
Yeah, no, a mellow turn left on Azusa Avenue here. Coming, he's going to come up along Vine Elementary School in just a second here. In fact, it might be at the next intersection, but you can see picking up a little bit of speed, just slightly. Still under 40 miles per hour. West Covina police continuing the pursuit now. Clearly in pursuit mode, by the way. You could see that he is code 3 with his lights and sirens on, right behind him, closing in on him just a little bit. So not too much distance, maybe 3 or 4 car lengths behind him, and additional units still in pursuit here. We have that primary unit and now 2 additional behind him, and it looks like he's going through that red. It was a red light he just went through. That's one of the first red lights. He didn't even slow down for that one. Went right through the red light and is continuing north on Azusa Avenue.
Okay, and we still, we believe it's just the one person on board, but it's unclear. There could be people in the back seat. We're not sure. We will not know, of course, until this comes to an end and they're able to clear that vehicle. It has dark windows. It's very hard to see inside, but when the window was open earlier, you could see that bottle of wine on the driver's lap there between his legs. Is it open or not? We can't tell. We do know that he was driving through a cemetery earlier. And who knows if he's distraught, recent loss of a loved one. We just don't know. But we do know that this vehicle is reported stolen. Okay, here we come. Closer to a pit.
He's getting close. Yeah. They're definitely creeping up on him. And you saw the minute that officer changed lanes, preparing for this pit maneuver, which we may see here in a second, he sped up, but now he's maintaining, and he steps on the gas. So he sees that clearly what that officer is trying to do there, and he is definitely confident enough that he was able to avoid that pit maneuver. It looked like there was 2 close calls there. If you notice, we just went underneath the 10 freeway, still in West Covina, but now north side of the 10 freeway, northbound on Azusa Avenue, and now picking up a little bit of steam. That pit maneuver attempt clearly agitated the suspect. He's going just a little bit faster and clearly, I stress again, competent enough to avoid that pit maneuver. So we'll see if they try another one here, but you clearly can see he is pretty desperate to get away.
Yeah, unfortunately there are other cars in the way now, but that was, he's
up
on
the curb. We're on the sidewalk now. On the sidewalk, northbound Azusa, now on the grass. This just turned very dangerous. Yeah. That is an indication to law enforcement right behind him that this person is now a much greater threat than we thought maybe 5 or 10 minutes ago. The stakes have just been amped up dramatically with a move like that on a pedestrian sidewalk in this part of West Covina. You can see we're entering a commercial area, a business district here in West Covina, northbound on Azusa Avenue. There easily could have been anybody on that sidewalk. You saw he went up on the grass to avoid that traffic, and that pit maneuver, I say again, was pivotal because that was just enough to agitate the suspect and raise the stakes dramatically compared to a situation we were dealing with in the last few minutes. Things have changed quite a bit here as we continue into Covina.
Yeah, that was a slippery move, too. I thought he was going to be able to pull that pit maneuver off because he was moving so slowly, but he was definitely aware. The driver of this vehicle was definitely aware of what was going on and accelerated just at the right time. He just missed out on that pit maneuver. But it's a tough thing to pull off, especially if the driver in the vehicle being pursued knows how a pit maneuver works, they have the advantage.
Yeah, I mean, just judging on the driving here and the way he has dramatically changed his behavior, we'll have to question whether they try that again, and they will have to re-examine how they attempt that next pit maneuver attempt if they decide to do it again. But not knowing what his mental ability, what his mental state is behind the wheel, clearly we've seen some indication that he may be under the influence. Not confirmed, obviously, but it's just in the last few minutes gone through a number of red lights, which is, again, something different that's new in this pursuit. Earlier on, this is now going on, we're at about 20 minutes into this, and he was driving much safer just a few minutes ago, basically doing the speed limit, not really breaking too many rules of the road, but things have, I can't stress enough, things have really changed here, and their tactics are going to have to change along with them. Look at this, going into the turn lane, maybe going around that traffic, right through another red light. This is definitely getting interesting, folks.
Yes, continuing now on Azusa Avenue, North Azusa Avenue in the city of Covina now. West Covina still in pursuit on the ground. There is a sheriff's helicopter overhead. And we've seen one pit attempt did not work. And we also know that earlier there was an attempt with a spike strip, but the driver was able to get around that as well. So a very tricky situation for officers. If there is only the one person on board, you can bet he's keeping a close eye on his rearview mirror, and he can see when those officers are getting close. And now another very evasive move here, going up over the median to try to get away in the oncoming traffic.
Into oncoming lanes of traffic, and you see that those West Covina officers are actually doing the same thing, following along with him, went over the medians as well. Their SUVs now making their way into the city of Azusa as we continue northbound Azusa Avenue. That was a dramatic move there over the median into oncoming lanes of traffic, now back into the correct lanes here. As we continue north, traffic is going to lighten up a little bit, but he will have the opportunity to get on the 210 freeway if he decides to take that freeway. That would be one thing to keep an eye on. Otherwise, he can continue straight up into the foothills. We'll just have to see where he intends on taking this again into the oncoming lanes of traffic without going over the median. That time he basically cut through there and is now going the wrong way on Azusa Avenue. We'll see if they continue to follow him, but this is getting much more dangerous. One unit on the right side, one unit going the wrong way, and both of them now able to keep up with him, maintaining visual and continuing this pursuit here. No signs of letting him go now, and the driving is just getting more desperate as we speak, really.
Yeah, we have seen a dramatic escalation in danger with this pursuit, and it just within the last few minutes, it was 5:05 when the deputy re-engaged. For a while, the deputies, or officers, I should say, who were following this individual were called off to respond to another call, and then got back on it at 5:05. That's when it started to ramp up a little bit, but then it really ramped up at about 5:15 with that pit attempt, and now it is just really dangerous. We've seen him crossing over medians, going up onto sidewalks, grassy area at one point. It's pretty scary, Chris.
Yeah, still pretty manageable speeds, but the erratic driving has been established, and that was the 210 that we just went under. So he went under the 210, is now just north of the 210, coming up on 4th Street. You can see he's continuing in that center lane there, but the way he was jumping those medians, and then, I mean, he's been through every single red light. In the last couple of minutes, he hasn't stopped for any of the stop signs or red lights, just going right through them, and West Covina police officers doing a pretty good job of continuing to stay behind him. It's not easy. It's very difficult. You know, you have so many other things to consider in a situation like that. And once the suspect starts moving erratically like that, they can't always follow him, you know, into oncoming lanes of traffic like that, especially when there's other cars around. But these officers clearly saw the opportunity to follow him into oncoming lanes of traffic. Now, again, in a pedestrian-heavy area here, I don't see a lot of people on the sidewalk. You can see one person there going through another parking lot, making a turn into this parking lot at Foothill Boulevard. He's going to cut through it and try and come out on Foothill Boulevard again. This is the second time we've seen this, but there's not even a driveway here. He is just making this up as he goes along, driving driving extremely erratically over sidewalks, and now back on Foothill Boulevard going the opposite direction, and now continuing on Azusa Avenue. So he basically just a complete circle around that parking lot to cut through, only to end up back on Azusa Avenue, continuing northbound now. That, again, just a clear indication of how wild and how nonsensical this driving is getting.
Yeah, and he's been on Azusa Avenue for quite some time now. I know it's very difficult to get ahead of him and predicting where he is, but spike strips would be great right now if they can at least get his tires so he can't do the maneuvering that he is able to do in that SUV. The one thing that's interesting, though, Azusa Avenue now is one way, so he doesn't have the option of jumping into oncoming traffic anymore. It's all, at least as of now in this particular stretch, it appears to be a one-way street.
Yeah, one way, which is good news. That doesn't give him the opportunity to go the wrong way, as you mentioned. But he's now bypassed all of the freeways available to him. If he continues northbound, the next major is going to be Sierra Madre Avenue, and then, as I mentioned, he could take this all the way into the foothills. But the driving that we're seeing here, you don't get the impression that he really knows where he's going. He doesn't seem to have a clear destination in mind. He just sees those lights and sirens behind him and just wants to get away. He just knows that the end is near here, doesn't want to go to jail, and is just desperate to lose these officers. That's what we saw earlier, that failure to yield originally, despite the fact that it was a really slow speed following at first. They really gave him plenty of opportunity, even once they lit him up, to pull over and try and get him to slow down. But West Covina being much more aggressive here, finally trying a pit attempt, and now we may be seeing the setup for another one, especially if we continue into this neighborhood here, because now traffic is virtually non-existent. A very quiet neighborhood. Once we get into the foothills here, we're right along the what lake is that? I'll try and get the name of that lake, but we're right next to that reservoir that's at the bottom of the foothills here. As he continues up San Gabriel Canyon Road, it's going to be wide open roadway for them to attempt that either a pit attempt or even a spike attempt if they can get units ahead of them.
Well, and officers are in a good position. If he were to try to bail out, they'll be able to quickly set up a perimeter because there are so many units on this pursuit. You could really see when he drove into that parking lot and then went over the curb and back onto the street again, you could see the long line of units following. It looked like about a half a dozen, Chris. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I think there's one more behind him. So you're right about that, Michelle. Just about a half a dozen units now in this pursuit. I believe all of them, and we could probably get a glimpse of this in a second. You can see the LA County Sheriff's helicopter, and I think all of those remaining units behind him are all West Covina officers. There may be an Azusa officer somewhere in there. Here comes another possible pit maneuver. You see him straddling those double yellow lines again, maybe setting up for that pit. So we'll see. The minute he did that, though, you saw that SUV speed up a little bit, trying to evade any more pit attempts by that officer. So it's a tough thing, because the minute they creep up behind him, that's what they expect to happen. They expect for him to speed up a little bit, and if he speeds up too much, it becomes too dangerous for a pit maneuver, and it becomes dramatically more difficult. But you can see where we are now, a one-lane going, one-lane coming road here. That's San Gabriel Canyon Road here in the foothills, and there's even a couple of cars on the other side of the road. So any pit attempt at this point is going to be a little bit tougher than it was a few minutes ago. Mm-hmm.
As they continue to elevate now, and I guess the good news is there's less and less people the further they go into these foothills. Perhaps there will be some opportunity to do something, but it's also extremely dangerous then if he crosses that yellow line with all the curves and the downhill, etc. It becomes exponentially more dangerous. In fact, Chris, you've been over a couple of really bad collisions up in the hills the last few days, and there's no time to react if he tried to pull one of those maneuvers right now.
We sure have, especially around these windy sections of, in this case, San Gabriel Canyon Road, which You know, to be honest with you, this may be a situation where they just go back into following mode, kind of continue to track him or pursue him through the canyon here. No real rush as long as he's driving these manageable speeds. You know, why agitate him if you don't have to? So they can continue up San Gabriel Canyon Road. There's a couple of opportunities for him to pull off, but if he doesn't pull off, they could just continue this all the way up towards the Angeles Crest Highway and just see how much gas he's got left. We don't know what his fuel situation is, so the more gas he could burn, again, time is on the side of law enforcement in these situations every single time. There's some construction, some road construction up ahead if he continues all the way up, but we still have some time between here and there.
Heading toward the Angeles National Forest now, or actually into the forest, as we can see from our locator, from our SkyMap technology, and continuing to go up. And this is north of Azusa now.
North of Azusa, we're well into the forest area. We're coming up on the San Gabriel Reservoir in the next mile or two, next couple of miles. So this is a windy road that continues all the way up to, as I mentioned, up to Angeles Crest Highway. And so we'll see, you know, I'm being told it doesn't go through, so we'll see if it does. So I'm being told it does not go all the way through. There may be some construction between here and there, but for the time being, he is doing no more than, 30 miles per hour, Rob? Let's go ahead and throw up our real-time speed tracker and get a better idea. Slowing down now, 20 miles per hour, and now getting off of the road here, behind that guardrail, and clearly desperate to get off. Okay, see, this is, I mean, the vehicle is not going to behave too well there. See, he's ripping off the bumper now. Just a scary situation. You can see how close he is to the edge. I can't tell how far of a drop that is down that embankment. There's definitely a steep embankment right off the right there. They're going to keep their distance here, but the mental state of this driver has been severely in question for the last few minutes, and now obviously it looks like he is stuck in this grassy area. Oh man, this is so stressful for these officers because they want to get him off, but he's not posing a threat to anybody right now. They're going to keep their distance and hope that he just brings the vehicle to a stop. That would be the best situation for everybody involved, and there come the hands. Both hands out the window. Clearly a desperate individual. Mental health, possibly a major issue here without, knowing too much about this suspect. But you could see he was very desperate to get away, but it looks like this pursuit has come to a stop along San Gabriel Canyon Road here in the mountains of the Angeles National Forest. It looks like they are now shutting down both lanes of, of the roadway. We'll go ahead and shut this off here. Stand by, guys.
So San Gabriel Canyon
they now
Road
have officers out of their vehicles with their guns drawn, and they are going to treat this very, very gingerly without knowing what his next intention is, David.
I was so worried that he was going to try to drive over the side, considering that, mental health is in question here. I was worried that that's what he was trying to maneuver to do, was drive over the side. It looked like he had front-wheel drive only, so his vehicle wasn't really able to maneuver as well as he probably expected on that little shoulder there. So he got bogged down and eventually stuck. But let's see what he does. The good news is his hands are sticking out of his vehicle, so he at least appears as though he's willing to surrender.
Yeah, and I couldn't tell. I mean, it doesn't look like the steepest of embankments, but good news is that he just brought the vehicle to a stop right there along the guardrail. Both hands now out of the driver's side window. That driver's side door is still closed. They're going to be asking him to step out of the vehicle here and shut the car off. But the K-9 is out, officers out of their car, 5 total, and I think they're all from West Covina, so they will be instructing him on what to do next. But for the time being, I can see the hands out the window. I can't see much more movement from that based on our vantage point.
And he picked one of the more dangerous parts to pull off that road. You can see that's one of the few areas, as we were following this, that has a guardrail, an indication of how steep that embankment is and what kind of danger he was in when he went on the opposite side of that guardrail. He took off part of the rear bumper as he made that maneuver. And as David said, it was really concerning to watch. I was feeling the same thing. I was worried he was going to drive off the cliff. And so now you can imagine officers are being very careful because they don't want him to go back and perhaps try to do such a thing. But the good news is he's still got part of his body out the window, and now it is just hopefully a matter of getting him to fully get out and be able to take him into custody.
And while that guardrail is an obstacle for humans, they do have a canine unit who is, as you can see behind that first vehicle, that dog is set up and ready to go, and he'll clear that in a tenth of a second. He'll get over it really, really quickly. So if need be, they could send the dog out in case the suspect either try to get away or do something dangerous. So that the good news is they have the canine.
Yeah, I think for the time being, they're going to let him, as long as he's not posing a threat, doesn't show a weapon or anything like that, I think they're going to let him take his time getting out and be as patient as they can with him. Again, unless he poses a danger or a threat to them, they're going to try and be patient with somebody in this mental state. But you can clearly see we're right next to the Morris Reservoir Dam, just to give you a better idea of where we are, near Morris Reservoir, right along San Gabriel Canyon Road. Those officers now out of their vehicles with their guns drawn, and the canine is out of the car. I don't think we'll see them unleash that canine unless they have a reason to do so. But what they're likely doing at this point is calling in for additional backup, maybe even calling for a crisis negotiator to come on out here and get on the line with him if he doesn't get out of the vehicle. So we saw the hands come out of the driver's side, but still have the that door closed. Surely they're trying to communicate with him. One other possibility, maybe a language barrier. That's often a possibility in a situation like this, where he's trying to comply but doesn't understand the instructions all too well, just sees these officers with their guns drawn. So we'll find out a little bit more here in the next few minutes, but I would imagine they are calling for additional backup and maybe even a negotiator.
Yeah, maybe as we continue to watch this, we're not sure how long this could be in kind of a standoff mode, but maybe we can not only see where we are. This is the San Gabriel Canyon Road in the Angeles National Forest, but perhaps recue some of the video from earlier that showed what led up to this moment. It was very dangerous at times with this individual driving very erratically. Here's one of the pit attempts, and that's when things really ramped up. This was about 5:15 this evening, and that's when that driver started to make some very evasive moves. You see here going up on the curb, onto the sidewalk, going over a grassy area in front of a business there, trying to get away from the pursuing units, and then after that making it turn into this parking lot, and then you think, well, maybe it'll end here. Nope, he just continued on over the curb again, getting back onto the road with a half a dozen units following. The officers did a very good job of staying very closely behind and not losing him through all of these maneuvers that he made.
He really stepped it up when it comes to his aggressiveness after that pit maneuver. There you see him driving on the wrong side of the road, and for quite a length there, you see that one car getting out of the way, and then he's going to move in. Chris, go ahead.
No, I was just trying to see if we could push in. We have some additional law enforcement officers entering the frame here. I'm trying to see what agency they're with. These are the lead units in the pursuit. These are obviously West Covina police. Let's go ahead and pan up, tilt up a little bit, Robin. We can see there's additional units that have just pulled up here. These are all West Covina police officers who are involved in this felony stop now along the San Gabriel Canyon Road. They are prepared with lethal and non-lethal weapons, several guns drawn, the canine ready to go, but they are trying to. Here he is. He's out of the vehicle. He stepped out of the vehicle, now walking backwards in the direction of those law enforcement officers. The suspect now willing to give himself up after a frightening pursuit. It wasn't the fastest pursuit. It wasn't a high-speed drama by any means, but it was certainly scary with some of the driving that we saw towards the end there as he made his way through Azusa, onto sidewalks at times, and through a number of red lights. Now, finally, after almost driving off that embankment here, he's decided to give himself up. The suspect now prone down, face down on the pavement here, and they will take him into custody any second now.
Thank goodness. It was getting pretty scary there at the end when it appeared that perhaps his mental state was really in question, but he's making the right decision here by giving up peacefully. and nobody got hurt in this. We don't believe that there was any damage to anybody's property except for the vehicle that he was in, which, by the way, is said to be reported as stolen, which is how this whole pursuit began to begin with. There is some bumper damage there, and he got stuck there on that shoulder, but he has given up, and he is being taken into custody. It was an interesting pursuit, Michelle.
Yeah, and they still have their guns trained on that vehicle because they need to clear it. It's unclear if there's anyone in the back seat. So now, standard procedure, they have to clear the vehicle. They have to see if there is anyone else inside, which is a possibility because of the darkened windows. We couldn't see inside, and so we'll see what they find out.
Yeah, very heavily tinted. There was nobody in that passenger seat. They just need to make sure that the back seat's empty and, of course, make sure there's nobody all the way in the trunk. So it looks like they are going to go ahead and open that passenger door. They could peer in there, and presumably we'll see the code 4 given here in just a second. You can see going door by door here, and they'll pop open the rear hatch, and looks like it may be locked, but it does look like this has come to an end, and it doesn't appear that there's any threat inside that vehicle at this point.
Okay, we'll just stay on it. Make sure there's no one in that trunk before we leave you, Chris
That's
Christie.
like my car. I cannot get my back hatch open ever. I mean, always. It's always stuck. So
looks like he left it in neutral there. They've put the car in park, and now they will give the code 4 here all over. And fortunately, that suspect giving himself up peacefully, surrendering to West Covina Police.
Okay, well, good to see this has come to an end without anyone getting hurt, and the suspect now in custody. Chris Christie, thank you for your excellent coverage as always, and we're going to move on now to other news of the day. A 27-year-old Long Beach man charged with murder today, accused of using an electric scooter to beat a woman to death.
The judge setting bail at $2 million, and here's Eyewitness News reporter Carlos Granda with more on today's developments.
Ahmad Rashad Redding stood behind.
Copy that. We're out. Clear.